Something lurking in the Florida swamps is consuming Burmese pythons whole, America's most feared invasive predator, and the footage researchers eventually captured is genuinely disturbing to sit through. For years, these snakes devoured everything in their path. Alligators, entire species wiped out. Nothing came close to stopping them. Then the radio transmitters surgically placed inside tagged pythons started going quiet, one by one. The signal still pinging from deep inside the gut of something no one could identify. No blood, no remains, just a predator moving through a swamp packed with scientists who never saw it coming. And when the cameras finally got it on film, the entire room fell silent. The vanishing signals. Back in 2021, Bartoszczyk and his crew at the Conservancy of Southwest Florida were running what looked on paper like the dullest science imaginable. Surgical transmitters inside juvenile Burmese pythons, radio signals traced through the wetlands day after day, slowly building a quiet picture of where these animals traveled and how they stayed alive. Then the signals began dying, not the transmitters themselves. Those kept going, steady as clockwork. It was the pythons carrying them that were disappearing. So the process starts by using anesthesia to put the snake under. That takes around half an hour. Once she's fully out, an incision is made to reach in and remove the old transmitter. Python 19 went first. 3 weeks of clean, reliable data, and then complete stillness. Not the slow, sluggish stillness of a cold snake. The team pushed through cypress roots and chest-high sawgrass to the coordinates, and every single one of them froze. No carcass, no blood, no drag marks, no shed skin. Nothing around them had been disturbed at all, just that faint electronic pulse, steady and rhythmic, beeping upward at them from inside someone else's body. Something had swallowed their python completely, transmitter included, and it was still out there. Then October came, same year, and it happened again. 2 more signals flatlined, 2 more pythons, gone without a trace. And then the x-rays came back, a python spine, curled and perfectly intact, sitting inside an unidentified stomach. One recovered animal had weighed over 50 pounds and stretched nearly 13 feet long. Its neck had been crushed, its body stuffed beneath a tangle of brush. Something had killed a 13-foot apex predator and swallowed it entirely. Bartoszczyk, who had spent 20 years doing this work, described it as the most surreal thing he had ever witnessed out in the field. 3 pythons, 3 transmitters, all recovered from inside something hunting through a swamp, crawling with researchers and trail cameras, and not a single person had laid eyes on it. They checked every piece of equipment thoroughly. The gear was working perfectly, which left only one possible explanation. Whatever this thing was, it was real, large enough to swallow a 13-foot snake, and skilled enough to do it right under the noses of an experienced field team without ever being spotted. The invasion that won everything. This time of year, the pythons are buried deep in there. This morning, the heat is already pressing down. We might get lucky out here, but wherever they are, they'll be tucked into their little nesting spots. To truly grasp why this discovery felt impossible, you have to first understand what these pythons had already accomplished. Burmese pythons have no business being here. They come from the opposite side of the world, Southeast Asia, Myanmar, Thailand, Vietnam, Indonesia, out of ecosystems that spent millions of years developing predators and diseases specifically designed to hold them in check. None of those controls made the journey with them. Through the 1980s and 90s, the exotic pet trade shipped thousands of cheap, striking little baby snakes straight into Florida. Then those babies grew to 15, 18, 20 feet long, and people did exactly what people do. They drove out to a canal and set them free. Then Hurricane Andrew tore across South Florida in 1992, ripped through the breeding warehouses, and released hundreds more directly into the wild. They arrived with no natural enemies waiting for them. Nothing here had evolved with any reason to fear them. So they ate. And this is the part where I really need you to picture it, not just the numbers. Start with the raccoons. In the hardest hit stretches of the Everglades, raccoon populations collapsed by 99.3%. Sit with that for a moment. That's not a decline. That's a complete erasure. Opossums down 98.9%. Bobcats down 87.5%. Marsh rabbits and cottontails simply vanished from places they'd called home for thousands of years. Now trace it further up the chain. Adult white-tailed deer swallowed whole. Alligators, creatures that survived the dinosaurs, turning up inside python stomachs. And the birds. Researchers recovered the remains of 58 different bird species from inside these snakes. 58. This didn't unfold over a century. It happened within a couple of decades, and if you've stayed with me this far, watching the kind of story that headlines tend to bury, take just a second and subscribe. It costs nothing, and it's the only way this channel keeps pulling at threads like this one, because what comes next is the part nobody had modeled, nobody anticipated, and nobody was ready to accept. Dr. Frank Mazzotti, a wildlife ecologist at the University of Florida who has dedicated more than 20 years to this battle, estimated the python population somewhere between tens of thousands and hundreds of thousands. Everything imaginable was thrown at the problem. Federal import bans, state bounty programs, detection dogs, thermal drones, environmental DNA testing, removal contests drawing in hunters from across the country, even the Army Corps of Engineers. None of it moved the needle. And gradually, the people who understood this ecosystem the most deeply began saying the same quiet thing. The pythons had won. Mazzotti said it about as plainly as it can be said, standing in a gravel parking lot outside Naples after 3 weeks in the swamp, sunburned and worn through. This ecosystem is being consumed alive, and there is no predator capable of stopping it. Nobody pushed back. The numbers left no space to. Every answer had failed. Then the transmitters on Bartosak's monitors began going dark, and the question shifted away from whether the Everglades could be rescued. It became something far stranger. What eats the thing that eats everything? Every answer they landed on fell apart. A large alligator seemed like the obvious candidate, except alligators crush. They death roll. They leave destruction behind, broken bones, torn flesh, half-consumed remains. These pythons left none of that. A Florida panther kills through the skull or spine, leaving behind puncture wounds and claw marks. There were none. No tracks either. A black bear, perhaps. Bears are powerful, but no bear swallows a 13-foot snake in a single piece. Nothing does that. They work their way down the entire food chain, and nothing fit. Whatever was responsible operated by a method their models simply couldn't account for. So they did the only thing remaining. They strapped trail cameras to trees at every location where a signal had gone dark, and they waited. Weeks passed with nothing. Then one morning, a researcher opened a clip, and the entire review room fell silent. It had been caught on camera. What appears in that footage is small. No monster, no alligator, no panther. Nothing that had appeared on anyone's list. Just a thick, dark coil lying completely still among the leaf litter at the water's edge, blending so perfectly with the decomposing vegetation that you could study the frame for a full minute and never spot it. A juvenile python passes through, unhurried, and then the leaf litter erupts. The strike happens faster than the eye can follow. In one frame, the snake is concealed. In the next, its jaws are already clamped onto the python's tail. There is no chase, no struggle. The python cannot win. The attacker simply begins walking its mouth down the body, jaw unhinging, stretching grotesquely wide, consuming the python inch by inch while it is still alive and writhing. You watch a snake nearly as long as the creature eating it disappear, tail first, down a throat that should not be capable of opening that wide. And it doesn't stop until there's nothing left but a bulge slowly disappearing into the darkness. The predator turned out to be a Florida cottonmouth, a venomous pit viper that has inhabited these very wetlands for thousands of years. An animal that every single member of that team had stepped right over on the trail countless times without giving it a second glance. It had been here all along, doing this all along, and nobody had thought to look down. The X-ray confirmed it without any doubt. The cottonmouth in that documented case measured somewhere between 34 and 42 inches. The python folded up inside it was nearly the same length, a snake consuming prey almost equal to its own size. Bartoszczyk stared at that image for a long while. He didn't call it a victory because what it actually meant was that for years, while millions of dollars and every agency in the state had failed to make a dent in this invasion, a native snake that no one had been watching had quietly been doing the one thing everyone insisted was impossible. And if it could manage that, the deeply unsettling question was how many other creatures out there were doing the same. The perfect killer. Looking back, it really shouldn't have surprised anyone. The Florida cottonmouth, Agkistrodon conanti, is one of the most underappreciated predators on the entire continent. Adults reach 30 to 48 inches, with rare individuals stretching past 6 feet tall, all dense muscle, built precisely for this flooded, blackwater landscape. This was always their territory. The pythons simply moved into it. That well-known open-mouth display, the white cotton lining everyone pictures, and is only the warning. The real weapon is invisible to you. Tucked between the eyes and nostrils are pit organs that detect infrared radiation, reading raw body heat with ruthless accuracy. Darkness is irrelevant. Camouflage is irrelevant. A python, even a sluggish cold one, runs just a fraction warmer than the surrounding water, and that's all a cottonmouth requires. There is no hiding from it inside its own swamp. Then there's the venom, hemotoxic, refined across millions of years to break down blood and tissue from within. For something the size of a young python, a single bite is the entire story. And here's what completely reframes all of it. This isn't new behavior. Bartosik's team confirmed that cottonmouths already routinely hunt 27 different snake species as standard practice. A python just got added to an existing list: strike, release, wait. A juvenile python at 18 inches hasn't yet developed its full crushing power, and once the venom takes hold, the result is already settled. 3 confirmed kills within one study area over just a few months. That's a pattern, a native predator recognizing that baby pythons are easy targets and capitalizing on it. But a single snake hidden in the leaf litter doesn't shift a population curve. And that's precisely what made Bartosik's next finding so difficult to absorb. The cottonmouth, it turned out, wasn't acting alone, the coalition. The transmitters had been telling a second story the entire time, and once the team started looking, it came flooding out. 5 of the 19 monitored pythons had been killed by American alligators. One of them, a gator only 9 feet long. The alligators hadn't surrendered the Everglades. They had been fighting back the whole time. Kill after kill, with no one keeping track. Then, in June of 2021, a trail camera captured something with no precedent anywhere in the scientific record. A bobcat, a native cat whose own population this invasion had decimated by 87%, walked straight up to a python nest and attacked it. Not scavenging, not investigating abandoned eggs. It went directly at the guarding female, slashing with both front paws, forcing that massive snake to retreat, then calmly raided the clutch one egg at a time. The first photographic evidence in history of a native mammal actively hunting a Burmese python nest. The bobcats had worked out the threat long before the scientists caught on, and it kept building from there. Hawks and owls were caught on camera snatching juvenile pythons right out in the open at dawn and dusk. Before those snakes could grow into the creatures that swallowed deer whole, black bears were picking them off. And panthers were too. Stretching across Picayune Strand and Big Cypress, an entire coalition was silently coming together. Vipers buried in the leaf litter, raptors circling above, bobcats staking out nests, gators lurking in the shallows, bears moving through the brush. No one called a meeting. Each of them was simply doing what millions of years of evolution had shaped them to do: push out the thing that has no business being there. But here's the honest truth, and I'm not going to soften it. It isn't enough. Not yet, anyway. A single female python can lay anywhere from 12 to 36 eggs in one clutch, sometimes even more, and she wraps herself around them, trembling her own muscles to generate warmth. They grow up quickly. They can survive for decades. The numbers are brutal, and they don't favor the locals. Human hunters have removed more than 5,000 pythons from the wild since the removal program got underway. The 2024 Python Challenge pulled close to 200 out in a single weekend. That sounds impressive, right up until you recall Mazzotti's assessment. Barely making a dent. These snakes are extraordinary at disappearing, and much of this terrain simply can't be covered on foot. So every single strike matters. Every cottonmouth in the undergrowth, every bobcat guarding a nest, every gator waiting in the water is buying the Everglades a little more time. Time for these behaviors to spread and be passed down, for the swamp to relearn how to protect itself. And that's honestly the part that should keep you lying awake at night, in the best possible way. None of this was ordered by anyone. The cottonmouths didn't sit around waiting on a permit. The bobcats never consulted a recovery plan. While agencies were still drafting grant applications, the swamp had already begun pushing back. The camera footage confirms it's real and it's happening. What the footage can't answer just yet is whether it's happening quickly enough, whether one snake learning to prey on a baby python eventually multiplies into 1,000. Whether all of it combined can ever outpace the reproductive power of a Burmese python. That's the question pulling Bartoszczyk back into the water again and again. The research is ongoing, the cameras haven't stopped rolling, and the Conservancy is widening its network, watching carefully for any signal that the gap is finally starting to close. Somewhere out in the dark water of Picayune Strand tonight, tucked between the cypress roots, something is unfolding. A cottonmouth is quietly digesting a python whole, its transmitter still sending its steady pulse into the night. Less than a mile from there, 100 eggs are on the edge of hatching. So, let me know in the comments, is the swamp genuinely fighting back? Fighting hard enough to actually win? Or are we simply watching it lose at a slower pace? And if you want to be around when the next footage comes in from those cameras, because this story is nowhere near finished, go ahead and subscribe right now. This battle is only just beginning.